friends. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Armageddon Machine, and that music was created entirely by our in-studio guest, security expert and author H. Michael Sweeney of Pro Paranoid Press. And as we're getting set here in the studio, I'll immediately mention technical difficulties sure are prevalent. So please excuse my tiny, tiny microphone that hopefully will get the job done. But however, you're not here to hear me, you're here to hear our guest. And again, thanks so much for coming in. Can I call you Harry?
Absolutely.
All right. Folks may recall our discussion at the Conspiracy Conference back in June, Conspiracy Con 10 in Santa Clara, California. And that was the first time we had ever met, was on the floor of the convention. And of course, we met through our now mutual friend, Ron Patton, a researcher and author in his own right. So folks may remember that our brief conversation was included in my coverage from Conspiracy Con, where we did discuss things. So to recap and to refresh folks and to get us all up to speed, can you give folks maybe just your thumbnail bio sketch?
My bona fides are kind of scary, so I'll try to make it simple. Basically, I was a targeted individual at one point, run afoul with rogue agents of certain initialed agencies, simply because I had come into possession of a document that, while it was in public domain, my interpretation of it didn't seem to go too well with them. I had contacted G. Gordon Liddy by mail to verify one point and expressed to him that information. He apparently never got that, but instead 3 days later my life turned into sort of a James Bondian experience, and that lasted for roughly 5 years. The thing that happens when you're a targeted individual is nobody wants to believe that. They don't want to believe in a boogeyman, so they tend to suggest that you're just paranoid or schizophrenic. And so you cannot get help from authorities. I was pretty much left on my own, and eventually was able to identify exactly who was involved, and found their base of operations, several companies involved. CIA fronts, basically. There is no such thing as a CIA front, of course. That's a misnomer. They've been disbanded officially, but of course they're still in operation, so now there's no accountability. So they are illegal if you find one. In any event, doing that, I was able eventually to establish a sort of a blackmail insurance policy so they'd leave me alone. And it prompted me to write my first book, which was The Professional Paranoid, basically a how-to on privacy and security.
Which we can even kind of show that to folks who are watching these videos. And again, we stream live video on ustream.tv, and again make these available later on youtube.com/Media Monarchy. Your presentation at the Conspiracy Conference where we met, the title of which I can't remember entirely, but the main thing that sticks into my head was something called Smart Dust.
Yes, very scary stuff. Basically, the main topic was really to focus on RFID technology, which is a very serious threat to your personal security. The Smart Dust is sort of a relative of that, a more dangerous version for purely intelligence applications. It's microchips that are so small that they literally float in the air. They're powered by laser beams as a rule, and when they're triggered with a laser beam, they do their thing, and each little mote of dust is programmed to do one tiny little thing, but you have a whole cloud of them sprinkled liberally in an environment, and they can report rather a lot of information.
And would stick to your clothing or your hair?
Yes, very dangerous. You could actually inhale it, and it's, of course, mostly made of toxic substances, but it's not so much a threat, I think, for individuals yet, as it is for certain kinds of military operations and targets. But we fear that it's going to be employed broadly at some point. It's very inexpensive, very flexible in its use. But there are other tools that are already in hand that kind of do the same jobs for the kind of targeting that is more prevalent against individuals.
And when we say that a lot of times people are written off as being crazy for discussing these kind of things, I know I've even seen some flyers here in Portland from someone discussing their harassment and their targeting for information they possessed, and even and being myself someone who would be a lot more of an open audience to this, and I even saw it as something perhaps to cover on the show, but even it came off as seeming a little nutty. So I would even say that I've seen things that, even though I know these things are a reality, that it's sometimes maybe they can't express themselves as well. And it's unfortunately just all flushed away under the cover of "you're crazy."
Well, and that is actually the whole point of political targeting, what we call political control technology. Electronic weapons, a technique called gang stalking, organized stalking. The original term for it was dogging. That was an invention of a Masonic group called the KKK. And the whole purpose of it is to basically reduce the targeted person into a social, political, and financial zero, so that whatever it is that they fear about that individual, in my experience in working with people, I do online consulting, and in my experience in working with them, if I work with them long enough, we're usually able to find out why they're targeted. It's because typically they knew something. They probably didn't know they knew something, but somebody else knew or suspected they knew it and feared what they might be able to do with it. So if you target them, the idea is to get them to go to authorities and make these outlandish claims, which would seem outlandish, especially if there's any kind of a frantic, you got to help me, you got to help me. You can't believe what they are doing. You know, you get all this excitement going. Or to get them to lash out at the people that are bothering them and then get a police report filed on them. So you get these reports officially labeling the person as potentially mental. And so if they later come out and even actually have some physical evidence, nobody will pay attention to them.
This is something that even, I'm not sure if you're familiar with actor, comedian, a guy named Dave Chappelle.
Yes.
He had the popular Comedy Central show that, long story short, he basically quit the show, didn't want to keep getting it bigger and have it, come out of his control where it wasn't his show anymore. And he ran away. But the story was spun as Dave Chappelle went crazy, he ran away to Africa, and he's given just a few interviews where he just kind of touched upon some of these things that go on within the sort of celebrity world, which we've only seen more and more of here in these last few weeks and months.
Yeah, with Randy Quaid as an example, I mean, I will be the first to say that his appearance in media would be taken by almost anyone as being truly paranoidal and schizophrenic in nature, but I happen to know things, and because I'm actually in touch with him, I can't really speak specifically, but I happen to know things that would tell me that his situation is no different than many other of the people that I found to be truly legitimate targeted individuals. And in point of fact, that there are aspects of the targeting which will tend to generate many of the same precise symptoms of schizophrenia. And some of these things are very, very subtle, but they impact on that person's ability to communicate. And so their communications tend to make them really seem that way.
Seem more erratic. And
Exactly.
I would say, fortunately for someone like Randy Quaid, where many, many, many other individuals wouldn't have this same ability, that when someone of his stature, because of course, if you're on TV or on the movie screen, people are going to listen to you. So when he calls a press conference, it's going to get a little bit more coverage. And the same can't be said for a lot of folks who maybe don't have a famous name.
Exactly. I mean, most targeted people are not in a financial position really to defend themselves.
Or to flee the country.
Oh, exactly, and certainly can't call a press conference and have a lawyer and all of that going on. But it's absolutely true that the targeting generally goes after those kinds of people. Normally, when you have somebody who has wealth, it's exactly as Randy was talking about. They don't normally target them to make them look crazy. They target them to destroy them. It's the financial side of it, which is part of his, chief part of his complaint, is usually where the targeting first becomes noticed. And there is definitely a long history of mysterious deaths in Hollywood.
Absolutely, and I was going to bring up some of those, but I definitely want to touch on the fact that you are such a well-known expert in this field that you are contacted by folks in these positions. So again, you said that you have been in contact with the Quades, and I know you're only able to say a little bit, but I just want to try to expand on that a little bit for folks who maybe said, "What?"
Well, let's be clear. I in no way want to misrepresent myself. I am not working with them, but there's that potential, and I'm the one that made the outreach because in this particular case, I feel that I would be able to help. The interesting thing is there's also a whole other category of people who are targeted. The super wealthy can be targeted if they fall out of line with the New World Order agenda, and I'll use that rather loosely. That could be defined a number of different ways. But we talk about fortunes like Howard Hughes, the DuPont family, and William Randolph Hearst. Anytime you look at their situation, you'll usually find ties to the military-industrial complex which went awry, and usually ties with CIA specifically. I mean, Patty Hearst, for example, the SLA, that whole thing was a CIA operation ground up. So you have to be a little bit aware of these things in order to kind of put the puzzle pieces together, but there's definitely a pattern. It would not at all be out of question or out of line for everything Randy Quaid said to be right on the money. It's also possible that he's misinterpreting certain aspects of it and drawing perhaps incorrect conclusions. This is very common among targeted individuals because they do not have the broader picture. They have only the evidence of the events around them, and of course they have to try to come up to some conclusion. It's a matter of self-defense.
And when he mentions Heath Ledger and David Carradine, and then also the erratic behavior of folks like Britney Spears or Lindsay Lohan, speculating that they are under some type of targeting as well, ties in and implicates, in my mind, the whole system.
Well, yes, and we're really talking about something called COINTEL. COINTEL